So, this is HEROMANTICS, Modern Tales of Heroes, Hearts, and Powers. I just wanted to take some time on this installment of the Capes and Mike's vlog, the app, Capes and Mike's vlog, to just show some of the visuals that we were talking about on the last episode. Like I said, the book is called HEROMANTICS, Modern Tales of Heroes, Hearts, and Powers, and it's going to be a collection of different. Let me just actually maximize this. This is the cover, in the making, work in progress. Like I said, it's a collection of different characters, different stories, from different worlds that are connected. This girl here is from the Nerd Crush, which is basically the condensed version of Operation Dream Girl. That's the main girl in that story. Over here, this is a representation of Hero Jones. Actually, Hero Jones in his Mighty Memoirs, so his middle school days, before he got his actual superpowers in high school. So Mighty Memoirs is also in the book. Those are more of cute stories, in the vein of Bobby's World. Right here in the middle, we got, this is Mary and her boyfriend, fiance, but Mary is actually this superhero girl here, Dynamite. This is what she transforms into, Dynamite, but in her civilian identity, she's Mary, and they're from the Hearts and Powers soap opera that's also inside this collection of stories. That shadowy figure in the background is the villain for Hearts and Powers. But like I said, it's a collection, so let me pause this for a second. Let me just pause. Yes, let me continue here. Sorry, something happened, so I just had to pause for a sec. But yeah, so 4 different stories in this book. Super Years. I didn't give you guys a visual of the Super Years, so this is from the Super Years. Main character Hero Jones. So this is in high school, and this is Hero Jones himself walking into high school the first day, grade 9. He ends up getting superpowers, but like I said, it's set in the 80s, so the artwork here is sort of vintagey. I'm trying to give that look of vintage artwork. Vintage, get you in that frame of mind of the 80s. If you see here, this is him again here, in the collage of images, rocking the Run DMC tracksuit as you would expect in the 80s. And this is his sidekick / best friend, Nikki Reed. Grade 9. They were friends since elementary school, but I'm saying way more than you need to know. Just know Super Years is like the Wonder Years, except with superpowers, and it's all told from the vantage point of this guy right here, young Hero Jones in grade 9 throughout high school, and the powers that he and Nikki possess or are inadvertently given one day. You see him here in class crushing on the girl in class, but it's kind of that kind of vibe, Wonder Years vibe. Moving forward, as I said, that's him in the Mighty Memoirs. Again, girls in the background and him imagining stuff in the vein of Bobby's World. Let's close that up again. But what you really like, again, let me go inside the book itself. And show you guys more of the actual book. Let me pause again. So like I said here, like we said on the podcast, many different stories. This is the Mighty Memoirs, the title page for Mighty Memoirs inside the book. I'm just gonna randomly scroll, and whatever comes up, I'll talk about it. So here, you see here, like what we're talking about on the podcast. Craig was talking about how I created pages that are not just plain white background, but like if I zoom in here, you can see there's a little bit of like, I forget what you call it, but there's some like kind of like artistic border. And more important than that, as Craig was saying, I've made it look like, aged paper type of effect in the background. So it's not just plain white paper from today, but it's kind of look like some almost biblical, almost archaeologic. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say it's like weathered, aged paper from something that you might have found, like from a scroll or something. That's what I was trying to do. That's the effect I was going for. Don't know if I hit it, but that's what I was going for. And of course, you see the text there for the story. I just feel it gives us the book a little bit more of a, like if you compare that to just plain white, as you can see here, it's not so high. I mean, it's just a regular book. It's like what most books look like, but I just feel like this is a little bit more interesting, giving it that flavor there. Like you're stumbled upon some ancient text or a very divine scroll. Anyways, keep going. So that's that story. That's in regular prose. Hearts and Powers here. You see this is the cover for Hearts and Powers within the book. This is Dynamite. Sorry, Incredigirl, her sister / sidekick. And I've talked about her in other episodes of Capes and Mikes, but basically Incredigirl, she's like the Batgirl. She's like the Batgirl archetype in the Hearts and Powers story, and Dynamite is more of like supposed to be like the alpha super Wonder Woman type archetype, for lack of a better word. And of course, she's there with her fiance. But what I wanted to show you was I have some splash pages within there, comic book splash pages. This is from the first chapter with Incredigirl, and I won't spoil it. You have to read the book to find out what that's all about. But here, I just want to point out her little sidekick, her little robot. I never talked about him on the podcast yet, but Incredigirl has this little alien robot sidekick. That's him right there, who gives her, he's basically the one that gives her all her cool gadgets and technology. Here she is again, another version of her robot sidekick there. Her name is actually Michelle. She is a gymnast. She was an Olympic gymnast when she was growing up. But again, that's a long story. You need to listen to Capes and Mikes, Hearts and Powers episodes to get more information about them, or wait till the book comes out. But again, here we go with the cool textured eye stuff. Let me just keep scrolling. Another splash page from Hearts and Powers. I don't want to give it all away, so let me press pause and go to the next one. Dynamite, of course. Again, there's Dynamite. This is the real Dynamite. So the images that's on the cover for Dynamite, those are just stock images of actually that I just stumbled across of some cool stock images. Literally, I'm not even gonna front. It's from Canva that I used for the visual on the cover. So they're not my images of Dynamite, my commissioned images of her. But this here that you're seeing here is an actual commissioned image that I paid an illustrator. I hired an illustrator, a fantastic female illustrator from here in Canada, but on the other side of the country. She's in the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast in Toronto. And about 3 years ago, I hired her to. Her name is Francine Delgado, and I'll probably put links to her. Whatever she has online for you to link to her social media or her web pages or whatever. But she's done work for, I believe she's done work for the big two, DC or Marvel. I can't remember exactly which one of them. And if she hasn't actually officially done work for them, she's definitely worked with artists from the big two. And she has her own comic out there. I forget what it's called. But in any case, I was fortunate enough to come across her about 3 or 4 years ago and hired her. I met her at Fan Expo here in Toronto, and I hired her, and she did this. And she did a few images. She did, like I said, she did this splash page for me of this. It's not even splash pages, but they're bio pages of the two girls, Incredigirl here, and then of course Dynamite, aka Mary, over here, the big sister. I should point out, since I'm doing all of that, I should point out these other full splash pages. These are done by a local artist here in Toronto, Canada. His name is Rudolfo. I can't remember his last name, but I'll have to put links again as well. And I'm going to put all these credits within the book as well, so you guys can check out the artists and where they come from and check out their own work. But this splash page, all of this, that version, this entire splash page is done by another male artist here in Toronto, Rudolfo. This is amazing work. I love it. So yeah, so that kind of stuff is in the book as well. Let's move on to something else. That's enough Hearts and Powers. Another artist that I hired to do this one is crazy. I said on the podcast many times, I've had so many different artists working on this stuff through the years, so it's not like I just have lots of images from different people throughout the years. This is a different artist who I worked with at Apple who did this for me, of IncrediGirl and Dynamite, Orb or Incredibot. Let me press pause, and this switch gears to another world within the book of HEROMANTICS. Okay, so switching gears, the super years. As I said earlier in this video, it's set in the 80s. This is the splash page, or I should say splash page, the internal cover page for the super years. I don't know if you guys have noticed it, which is pretty obvious, but basically I had to create sort of like a template that I could kind of insert the images for each different world, but still have some kind of uniformity. And from world to world and story to story within the book, this is part of the reason why I created this template / motif with the ancient script and everything, to give some continuity. Even though you're going from world to world within the book, I just wanted to give some continuity and flow to the book, and so it just feels like you're still in the same universe. And even though they're different worlds, different stories with different characters set in different times, you still have a little bit of continuity and feel like you're in the same book. So this is the super years. Again, you saw the splash, we talked about that enough, but what I wanted to show you was how each story is different. So it starts off with prose, but then it quickly gets into, I haven't finished doing the outline of this book, so don't mind the fact that some of these pages are still white when they're all going to be like this in the end with the script stuff. But it goes into the actual script of the comic book. So the super years, I did commission, again, I had many different artists working on the different images. This artist here that did this comic book layout, Brian Royer, a great, fantastic local artist in Brampton, here in the GTA, and he did the cover for my Operation Dream Girl book. But in addition to that, I hired him at the same time, and he did a couple he did a good amount of work on the panel work for the super years, which I was in development with at that time, trying to further develop it into an actual comic book, along with my mentor, who I've mentioned a million times on the on the podcast, Vincent Galvez. And this is just a quick little one page of the many pages he worked on of Henry Jones, aka Hero Jones, on the night one of the nights when he was in battle with his arch nemesis. But again, what I'm showing you this is that the format of the way super years is presented. This is an actual comic book script. So the story of the super years that you're going to get in this collection of the HEROMANTICS is in the form of comic book panels. These are panels. These are like storyboards that Brian Royer did for me of the comic book for the super years, and you're reading the actual script caption. Just mere minutes later, I found myself bracing for impact from oncoming traffic when trying desperately to stop my sworn enemy from bleeding to death in my hands. And these are like the images that he created. Right there, you see that girl, right? That person is actually Nikki in the foreground, his best friend Nikki, and in the background, he's trying to rescue his arch nemesis, the big hulking arch nemesis. Again, there's a very cool video that I'm gonna recommend after this online on the Capes and Mike's one of the Capes and Mike's playlists, where we get to hear Brian Royer talking about his process of drawing these images. And you get to hear from Vincent Galvez, and I'm also in the video, and we're just talking about super years in general. It's a little behind the scenes insight into a little meeting that we had as we were developing it back in the days. But again, as I said, many different illustrators right here. This image here is not from Brian. This is from the first illustrator, another guy named Joel, who I worked with at Apple, the infamous Apple retail. And he's a phenomenal illustrator. He's the one that did these first initial versions of Hero Jones in the Run DMC tracksuit and other images. The ones that I showed you before from the cover are from Joel as well. And again, as I said, the script continues, the comic book script continues. You read the comic book script. Again, Joel's work right here. And the script continues. So yeah, I think that's enough about super years. Let me switch gears again. Let me press pause and switch gears again. Okay, so last but not least, it's not the last, but the last one I'm going to talk about on this video because I don't want the video to be too long. Nerd Crush, which, as I explained to those of you who have already listened to the podcast or were listeners of Capes and Mikes, Nerd Crush is technically an condensed version, an edited version of my full novel called Operation Dream Girl. Hence, if you are aware of Operation Dream Girl, you can see here that this is actually taken from the cover that Brian Royer did that I just mentioned. This is the main character, Joe, and his love interest slash heartache and pain, Ginger Girl. And these are images that I've kind of remixed and taken from the Operation Dream Girl project, much like the story itself. Don't mind that Ginger Chronicle. It's going to change. It's not actually the name I'm going with for this condensed version. It's changed to Nerd Crush. But in any case, this summarizes this is a new version of the Operation Dream Girl book, but what I was explaining and people were not able to necessarily see is that this book is presented in another format where it's all poem, it's all poetry. It's poetry and then episodic short stories around the poetry that really gives you something different than just the straight prose. Again, a splash page, that's the main character, Joe. I'm not going to explain what this is all about. Well, actually, no, I will. So as I said, it's all poetry, but it's also the entire story is told from the perspective of a diary. So it's Joe's diary. The entire story, the entire novel is written and presented in the form of Joe's diary. That's why you see here a diary, lined paper with him writing and written, not typed out text, but him written out text, handwritten text. So thus, when you go into the book or this story you see here, it's all like simulated diary writing, but also the other novelty of it is not that it's just a diary or journal is what I've been saying diary. What I really meant to say is journal. So it's all handwritten, simulated handwritten fonts. But in addition to that, the entire story centers around poetry as well. So Joe writes poetry, and every single chapter has a poem that he wrote that is every chapter either starts or ends with a poem that was written by Joe that was inspired by the girl or the event that he's writing about in that particular chapter. In this case, you have Ginger Girl, the main love interest that this poem is written about. And then it goes into the actual journal entry, and that's regular prose format that he tells his story this particular day. You see, usually there's supposed to be a date. Maybe there's not a date. Oh, I think the date's at the begin. The date is at the beginning of the chapter. But anyways, it's just like a typical journal. It's not like, he does little doodles. I don't know if you can see that bummer. A little smiley, sad face. Little doodles. Oh, there you go. There's dates. Yeah. So at the beginning of each entry, he puts the date, just like a typical journal. Then he gets into it. This particular one, he mixes it up. He puts the poem in the middle of the entry after he starts writing. Long poem again. And then he gets back to telling what inspired that particular day's journal. Oh, I just thought of another comparison is Doogie Howser. If you're as old as me and you can go back to the 80s, Mr. Neil Patrick Harris in his debut on television, Doogie Howser, who used to write journal entries at the end of every episode, which in turn was essentially the end of every day of his life. He would do this digital journal on his computer. That's kind of what this is like. Joe is doing a written journal every day. Another splash page about his adventures with different girls. Ginger Girl here. Hip Chick. He gives every girl a code name. This one is Hip Chick, as you would imagine, as opposed to using their real names, and he just writes about them. First Love is another girl. Anyways, I've said enough. what I just wanted to showcase was the fact that yet another different format, rather than just straight prose. Within the book of HEROMANTICS, you're going to get many different formats. You have your comic book format, you have your poetry and journal format, and then you do, of course, have your regular, real, straight prose, paragraph format. Let me press pause and come back and wrap this up. So, like I said, that's what it is, HEROMANTICS. It's the work in progress. This was what we segue from the Hearts and Powers book by itself. I decided to do this. And I hope you guys enjoy this little behind the scenes. I'm trying something new. The Capes and Mikes video blog. I don't know if I'm going to give it an official title, like as if it's its own show. Capes and Mikes after show. I don't know. I'll think about it. I'll work on it. But regardless of whether it has an actual title, this is just going to be, the format is going to be a real raw vlog. Me talking about and sharing things that we talk about on the podcast that are visual, that you're unable to see, and not only just things that you're unable to see, but me also giving you guys behind the scenes, more in-depth content about the process and about the content that I'm creating as a independent creator, revolving around both my superhero writing and as well my music projects. So speaking of music, in the background this entire time we've had the 9-O's Vibe rocking, which is the EP that is now available on Spotify, and we definitely wrapped up last episode talking about that. So I'm going to create another video to talk about that and give more insight and share about that. Just basically keep coming back to the Capes and Mikes vlog. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe down at the bottom, Capes and Mikes. I'm going to continue to create different playlists, but the vlog is going to be its own separate playlist, where it's just basically, I'm going to try my best after every episode to do a recap of each episode of the podcast, and also give added bonus content like this to enhance the experience of listening to the podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and I don't know what the next one will be and when it will be, but I look forward to seeing you then. Peace out. Yours truly, Henry Young Shell. Yeah.